Some say it makes the world to go round, while others say it's the root of all evil. But have you ever wondered, what is money? What is it about money that makes this world to go so crazy? You have business people losing their families all in the pursuit of money. Entertainers losing their souls for money and fame. And politicians don't even think twice when presented with an opportunity to make money at the expense of the very people who elected them into office. History shows monarchs giving executive orders to their armies to take over foreign lands and destroy whoever stands in their way. And this was done because of gold, diamonds, platinum, all those valuable minerals. Simply put, the colonization that took place in Africa and other parts of the world was because of money. The sad part is this does not just stop with corrupt businessmen, corrupt politicians, or monarchs. Church organizations have also shown their interest in this race, for money. They don't want to be left behind. And as a result, scripture is turned and used as ammunition to scare and instill fear to the very people it's meant to give hope to. Many pastors are so money hungry that they twist the scriptures for their own benefit. Just to give you an example, there's Malachi 3 verse 8. This verse has been turned into a nuclear bomb, and once it's dropped, there is no return. It's game over. If you are not tithing, then you have robbed God, and He will curse you with a curse. So the question stands, what is money? Does it make the world to go round? And is it the root of all evil? The good book says the love of money is the root of all evil. So money isn't evil, but if you love it more than you love God and your neighbor, then it becomes the stem that all manner of evil grow from. So what I conclude from all this is, money is not neutral. When you add a simple ingredient into the equation, the effects of money are greatly altered. So if adding the love of money to the relationship you have with money results in it being the root of all evil, what does debt do? How does debt alter the relationship you have with money? Personally, I believe when you add debt into your relationship with money, you move to a zone of desperation. And when you are desperate, your wisdom becomes suspended, because desperation always outpunches wisdom. Winston Churchill once said, the further one can look back into the past, the further forward one is likely to see into the future. For you to truly get an understanding of what debt is, or how it's guaranteed to lead you into a life of misery, you have to understand the history of money. Most people don't know how we got to using the paper money we now call money. Unfortunately, because it's not taught in schools, most of us just perpetuate what we found with no understanding whatsoever. Proverbs 4:7 says, wisdom is the utmost importance, therefore get wisdom, and with all your effort work on acquiring understanding. I want us to gain an understanding regarding money, especially debt. In essence, when you are in debt, you would have borrowed, and in this case, we're discussing money. So when you're in debt, you would have borrowed money from someone. So what is this money that you would have borrowed? For you to understand what money is, we have to do a little digging into history. And there are many ways of diving into this history dig. So for clarity and ease, I want us to dive in using the law of headship. This law is exemplified when you take a shower. So when you walk into a shower and you open the water, the law of headship goes like this. The water that touches the head will eventually flow to the rest of the body. It doesn't matter whether it's hot or cold water. As long as the water touches your head, it will flow to the rest of your body. Because the modern financial setup is heavily influenced by the Western world, we need to trace our history using the Western world timeline. We need to trace how our financial setup began. So let's dive in. If you lived in the bygone era when money wasn't printed on paper, most of your business would have been done through directly changing one product for another. So if you were a farmer and you anticipated a bountiful harvest, you would invite the local builder, let's call him Bob, to expand your storehouse. After negotiating with Bob the builder, you come to an agreement. It will cost you 30 goats in order for Bob the builder to complete your storehouse project. And he further informs you he needs a deposit of 15 goats so he can go and buy material from the local hardware store. Our friend Bob the builder is now happy with the half deposit you gave him. So he goes to Harry, the local hardware boss, to buy the needed material. So Harry, the hardware boss, is happy to do business with Bob the builder. So because he has the material, but there's just one problem. It turns out Harry, the hardware boss, doesn't want to trade his material with goats. Instead, he wants to trade his material for chicken. You see, Harry's family is due for a wardrobe makeover, and Tom the tailor just recently gave Harry, the hardware boss, a quotation for 200 chickens to do the family wardrobe makeover. Because Tom the tailor loves eggs, he wants to have chicken in his yard so he can have fresh eggs every morning. And he is not going to accept anything else but that. Of course, you being a sharp guy, you suggest doing a barter exchange with Charlie, the chicken guy, since he has a farm full of chicken. The problem is Charlie, the chicken guy, doesn't want to sell his chicken at the time. More especially knowing that Tom the tailor will end up with his chicken. And now everyone is stuck. So I know this is very confusing. That's how confusing it was back then. What we've just described is the barter system. This is how people used to trade in the olden days. In fact, this is how kids trade during lunch at school today. My daughter comes from school with a different lunch than the one that we packed for her. And she says she exchanged her sandwich for a particular fruit that or sweet that she liked. You know, that's how they're doing it at school right now. So we can both confirm that the barter trade system had its own flaws. But over time, people got smarter on how they traded things, and they came up with better ways to buy and sell stuff. Around 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians thought using gold and silver was a great idea to use for trading. That's because gold and silver is rare to come by, and this meant it was valuable. It had value, and the Egyptians capitalized on that. But back then, it wasn't the exact money that we know today. The gold and silver used came in different shapes and sizes, and some of it wasn't good quality. So it wasn't really the same as the money we use today. Because they traded gold and silver that wasn't the same size, this made pricing things really tricky. You couldn't just say something cost X amount of coins since the coins weren't standardized yet. Trading was a bit of a gamble because you never knew exactly what you'd get in exchange for your valuables. The first time we see something like our modern money was in the kingdom of Lydia between 680 BC and 630 BC. Lydia was an Iron Age kingdom. It would today be located in the western province of modern-day Turkey. The Lydians made gold and coins that were of the same size and weight, which made them easy to swap for goods and services. So they were interchangeable. Now we had money, and its value came from the gold and silver it was made of, because gold and silver are rare and valuable metals. So they had intrinsic worth at that point. The gold and silver was the money in itself. Money became a useful way to measure value. You could price something in a certain number of gold coins or silver, and everyone would understand it, no matter who they were. When this idea reached Athens, Greece, it truly took off and it became mainstream. When the Greeks adopted gold and silver as their tool of trade, it became mainstream because the Greeks were a leading nation at the time. It was possibly the most powerful, or should I say, it was the most influential nation at the time. Because gold and silver was now the choice commodity to trade with, goldsmiths began to spring up, and they produce and maintain the size, the weight, and the quality, the good quality of gold. Since gold was so valuable, walking around with gold wasn't the safest of practices, and the goldsmiths had designed vaults where they kept their own gold coins. And most merchants opted to safekeep their gold coins with the goldsmiths because of the safe vaults that had been designed. The merchants were happy that their gold was kept safe at the goldsmith's vault, and the goldsmiths charged them a small fee for keeping the gold. As time passed, the goldsmiths started to borrow out the gold they kept to people they trusted. The profits that were made was then shared with the merchants who had left their gold for safekeeping. So the Italian merchants usually made these deals besides a bench, and they would put gold on top of the bench. So when the Italian merchant needed to borrow gold, they would say, "I'm going to the bench to borrow gold." And in Italian, bench is banco. So they would actually say, "I'm going to the banco to borrow gold," or "I'm going to the banco to safekeep my gold." So the banco is what we call today the bank. So slowly systems were developed or stumbled upon. One such system was a note that the banco or the bank or the bench could write to you, stating that you have X amount of gold in their storage, in their vault. So the banco could give you a note stating that you have X amount of gold in their storage. And when people made their business dealings, instead of giving each other gold, they would give each other the banco notes or the bank notes that stated how much gold coins they had. And you'd exchange the banco note or the bank note for the gold in the storage. This became as the bank note. The banknote simply reflected what amount of gold you had in the vault or in the bank's safe. The banknote was not the money, it was a representation of the gold in the vault. The gold was the money, not the paper that you got from the business dealings. It was simply reflecting the money in the vault, or it was simply reflecting the gold in the vault. Okay guys, so today we have learned a little history of money, how people first traded and how we got to the formation of banknotes, and we saw a glimpse of how the banks actually started. This is Hacken Equip, and I'm your host Swazi N. Next week we'll continue with the Unmasking Debt series, the history of money. Remember, desperation always outpunches wisdom. Don't operate under desperation. Okay, cheers, guys.